Hey guys, so a certain interview just released with some pretty fascinating timing. I've been working on the Yosuke video, the final party member left in my Persona 4 character analyses. And if you don't know what I'm referring to, it's the interview conducted by AnimeCorner that was posted just this past Thursday. Link to the full video in the description down below if you want to take a closer look. Now, I'm not gonna comment on the entire interview, I just want to focus on certain key parts and why I think it's still too early to call if a certain something regarding Yosuke is still off the table in Persona 4 Revival. With that said, I will be talking about some pretty significant Persona 4 spoilers, so just a warning if you're saving a first playthrough of the story ever for Persona 4 Revival. I'll also be making a few comparisons to what ATLUS did for Persona 3 Reload near the end of the video. They'll be non-specific and very slight spoiler territory, but just wanted to give a heads up there as well. Okay, so let's start with the biggest Firestorm question asked around the 5-minute mark. Have any controversial scenes been rewritten because of changed audience expectations? And Wada-san's response is that they haven't changed anything core of the story or characters' thoughts or how they should act. All that is kept the same. We've just changed the way that's expressed. Take Yosuke. He can be insensitive to how he treats outsiders. And the first thing people probably think in regards to that are the jabs Yosuke makes at Kanji and or at his expense. With that said, I have the need to point out that I think most people who are worried that this changes Yosuke's overall personality actually forget how much, or well, underestimate maybe, how much Yosuke's insensitive comments and jerkish behavior oftentimes has nothing to do with stereotypical gay jokes or humor that was common during the aughts. Teddy has this sore spot about being hollow and empty inside early on, right? And Yosuke sometimes says,
"You are hollow inside."
Shut up! Stop saying I'm hollow!
He pushes Naoto's buttons quite often too.
Useless after all.
Don't call me useless.
You're pretty cute when you're angry.
So yes, he riles people up beyond just the times he pokes fun at what was depicted in Kanji's dungeon. I think people also forget that it's not actually Yosuke who even has the initial negative, isn't quite the right word, odd reaction to two dudes meeting up together the way Naoto does with Kanji super early in the game. It's actually Chie who first brings attention to it, and if anything, Yosuke just acts kinda confused. Which brings me to the considerable differences in Yosuke's writing from the original main story scenes in Persona 4 and the additional events added in Golden. So I already made this argument in my Teddy video where we go over the Golden editions versus his original depiction in P4, and how he is the most flanderized and misrepresented character in these new Golden scenes, with Yosuke as a very close second. Wow. Okay, so looking back on this part, I really brain fogged in this latter part of the section, so let me try this again. Tension between characters is still very important to depict, especially considering Persona 4's original opening's lyrics, which includes, "We're all trapped in a maze of relationships." On that note, there are certainly ways to depict homophobic reactions and dialogue without leaning into abject harm. And, aside from the school camping trip scene, Yosuke's OG P4 dialogue towards Kanji is pretty mild, honestly. It's really only Golden where things actually get cruel. So my point here is that there's technically already a case of characters' thoughts and how they should act, all that is kept the same. It's just expressed differently among these two separate releases of Persona 4. So just keep the tone more along Yosuke's original dialogue. Though I also say this technically under the assumption Revival is actually committing to the Yosuke romance option, because otherwise there really is no narrative purpose to any of this without there being some kind of commentary for Yosuke's internalized queer phobia. Or well, at the very least, if the pairing is off the table again, I think there needs to be some kind of acknowledgement by Yosuke himself that Kanji's arc isn't about being gay in the end. Even something along the lines of like, yeah, I know, I'm just messing with you. In response to, one of Kanji's, that's not it, damn it! Something like that would go a long way. But this brings us to the next key part of the interview I'd like to comment on. Around the 5.5-minute mark, they ask if we can expect any change to the social links, and Wada's answer is, at base, no. At base, you say? Here's what I'm getting at. Some players might be under the false impression that the Yosuke romance is some solely fan-constructed headcanon, but it for real is found in the original game files, just unused, of course. A good general overview of all the unused Persona 4 content was done by my friend BigKlingy. There's a link up in the cards and also in the description if you're curious. But for the sake of this video, I'm focusing solely on unused content in relation to Yosuke. And speaking of social links at their base, Yosuke's social link already contains a romance flag that is typical for any of the romanceable girl social links. The main flag in particular is rank 8, and then presumably in the final rank he'll confess to the protagonist given the unused voice files in both Japanese and English.
I like you. Don't make me say stuff like that. Don't go.
So it's true that this is something that many players already know. However, something related that I think is definitely not as well known is that it appears that Persona 4 was gonna have similar mechanic to Persona 3, where any of the romanceable girls could have their social link reverse and some other party member could refer to it. And of course, interestingly enough, Yosuke is the only guy to have one of these, as you can see on screen right now. So, my overall point here is that it's there. At base, the Yosuke romance option is there in the original game. They just cut it, and ultimately I don't think we'll ever know the exact reason why, though I'd like to mention an interview with director Hashino from 2018 regarding Catherine Full Body. Damn. Okay, so this is a bummer because I can't actually find a copy or a translation of the original 8-page Famitsu interview, but at least this summary mentions that, yes, Hashino-san said that Catherine Full Body, which is an updated release of Catherine, is a complete version of the game that he wanted to tell originally in 2011, which only now can officially be delivered because of, quote, the sense of values has been diversified since 7 years ago. Now, this video isn't meant to debate or explore how successful Catherine Full Body was at this, but this game features the most prominent queer themes and characters found in any ATLUS game so far. And the reason I bring this up is because it essentially implies that for some reason or another, whether it be higher-ups or some internal staff decision, at the end of the day, ATLUS as a company just felt like it couldn't include such brazen queer representation. which the Yosuke romance definitely would have been back in 2008. Like, you really have to consider what the JRPG landscape looked like at the time. This actually reminds me, so growing up, I was a big Harvest Moon fan, and I distinctly remember how big of a deal it was that the DS game released in 2005 in Japan included a few lesbian romance options, which was like a pioneer for Japanese games that didn't even make it into the global release, y'all. And not only that, it was sadly referred to as the best friend system. Like, historians will say they were just lifelong best friends. This brings me to the final key portions of the interview. So around the 6-minute mark, AnimeCorner asks if we can expect any content in Revival that wasn't in Golden at all, to which the answer is yes, but we can't talk about it just yet. And I can't help but find this pretty interesting in conjunction with their answer to the final question. Is there anything else you'd like to share about Revival? So Soejima-san says there's all sorts of interesting things we've brushed up and added. And Wada adds, when we first started working on P4 Revival, we got a chance to really look back at Persona 4 in detail, and it made me realize this game is such a gem. Hello? Look back in detail, you say? As in, like, maybe reminding yourselves that Yosuke had a romance route nearly ready to go way back then? So, a pretty common fan complaint of the original Persona 3/Fez on PS2 was how the boys didn't have social links. Then the Persona 3 Portable FemC route added social links for the guys. And in a sort of similar vein, even though there was no FemC herself, unfortunately, P3 Reload kinda took inspiration / built on that and added brand new Link episodes for the dudes in male protag story. This is on top of all the new dorm activities and stuff. So with what they did in P3 Reload in mind, it really shouldn't be out of the question, nor too much effort on Persona 4 Revival's part, to put the Yosuke romance back in. At most it'd be like rank 10 expanding a bit more beyond just his confession, and then additional scenes for the holidays and optional dates. Realistically, it's not that much extra work when you're doing everything else for the game already. And it would be one of the biggest opportunities they've ever had to make up for their past blunders with queer themes. It's totally justified to be skeptical and cautious regarding their past. But NGL, I feel remiss not to mention how ATLUS has been cleaning up their act ever since the start of the 2020s. P5R improved the original P5's infamous scenes, P3 Reload improved on the Yakushima Island segment, and Metaphor Refantasio didn't contain a single negative joke or scene regarding the queer community, which is kind of a big deal considering all other Hoshino-led projects in the past. And then there's what we know of Persona 4 Revival so far. Sure, it's not much, but the brief look we got at Shadow Kanji's boss already hints at a better direction. So the original Persona 4 oftentimes mistakenly equated sexual orientation and gender identity, as well as including some harmful misconceptions and imagery of both. Check out both my Kanji and Naoto videos for much more in-depth analysis on that. But for the sake of this video, let's take the two male sex symbols in OG P4's presentation of Shadow Kanji. what is actually being portrayed is essentially the same pitfall the townspeople are wrongly assuming about Kanji, that he's absolutely gay and is sexually attracted to men, when really his internal conflict has more to do with his gender expression, right? How it doesn't fit into the rigid confines of what's typically expected of boys or men. His interests are what society deems feminine, so he feels like he has to overcompensate with a very overt masculine presentation. So yes, Revival changing this to one male, one female symbol conveys Kanji's internal strife better. And on this note, if P4 Revival's devs really wanted to make things easier on themselves, revive bisexual Yosuke. It fixes pretty much everything controversial mentioned in this video anyway. But yeah, I do get that there's a cynical way to read the direction ATLUS has been going this decade too, in that not only have they rectified previous hiccups, but that they'd much rather skirt any potential controversy at all, including not even attempting to represent queer identities anymore. Yet the leaked protag for Persona 6 is intriguing to me given the rising xenophobic sentiments in Japan, so similarly, I like to keep hopes tempered, but still present when it comes to the possibilities we may see in Persona 4 Revival. Like, do I really believe the Yosuke romance will happen? Can't say I'd be surprised if it doesn't, and this video ages poorly, but I'll also hang on to this copium because nothing in this interview struck me as an official shutdown. But what do you guys think? I can't be the only one, right? Anywho, a big thank you to all my patrons and channel members for making this video possible. You can come join us in the private Discord where we do fun things like reading club and watch parties. Finally, I'd especially like to thank my Special Fusion supporters BigKlingy, Sam Bezjak, M. Meownalin, Malcolm Lowry, Jimmy Tapiz, Frank Sasaki, Phoenix Black, Weeping Blade, Meek Massacre, Tactical Salmon, Silverwind847, and Anger Boda.